Hello, today I am so excited to be talking to Pegg Thomas, multi books, multi award winning author, multi series. She's got it all going on, and she has some other special extra stuff that I love. So, Peg, tell us about you.
Well, first, thanks for having me on your podcast. I really appreciate being able to come on and talk to your audience. Um, I am basically just a farm girl who came up to be a writer. I got here very circuitous route. I went to college for drafting and design engineering, met my husband, got my MRS degree, and we raised our son. We just have the one and homeschooled him. And then suddenly, when you only have one and you have an empty nest, it's really empty right now. And I needed something to fill my time. And I was that kid back in high school who said, someday I'm going to write a book. And I
Uh-huh.
don't even know if I meant it, but I said it so many times. And when I had time on my hand, I just, okay, I'm going to write a book. And that's how it started.
Well, how old were you? How old were you when I shouldn't ask that. I was
You
going to
can
say,
ask
how
it.
old were you when you started writing? Because there are a lot of people that come in to retirement age and they want to launch into a writing career, but they feel like the time has passed them and they're too old to do that. So,
Yeah.
um, can
I
you?
was 47 when I sat down and said, I'm actually going to do this.
Oh, you're still a baby then.
Well, I was, but I'm not that anymore.
Um,
But when I initially had an interest in writing, I remember my ninth grade English teacher told me that I could write and that I should. And I was a teenager, so I didn't listen
no.
because who does in ninth grade? When I released my second indie book, Maggie's Strength, I searched out that teacher. She's still alive. She's retired. She's quite elderly. Um, I found her. It took me about a year to locate
Wow.
her, going through friends of friends and whatever. My brother still lives in our hometown, and we finally found her. I mailed her a copy of the book, and she sent me back just the nicest letter because I dedicated the book to her and
Oh.
told her I wished I would have listened to her all those years ago.
Well, you know what? Don't you think God has a timing already down?
Yes, I think we have a season. I
Yeah.
think we have seasons in our life. I used to raise sheep. I raised border Leicester sheep for 28 years, and I loved it. I loved raising the lambs. I loved shearing my own sheep. I did all of it. But that was a season.
Mhm.
Where I'm at now, I can't do that any longer. I've had 3 surgeries on my right hand. There's just no way physically that I was able to continue with what I was doing. So I left that behind. That was a season. Homeschooling was a season. I absolutely loved homeschooling. It's not for everybody, but it was perfect for us. But it was a season.
Right.
I was a 4-H leader for 20 years. I said I was on the 20-year and out plan,
I was
and
a
I
4-H
loved
leader
it.
too. I was a 4-H
Yeah.
leader too. And it's interesting. I was a 4-H leader and then I went into teaching. I was taught middle school for years. It's interesting that the people that you're connected to in that season tend to drift away once your season is over.
Most of them, yeah,
Yeah.
because it's their season too. I mean, you go through these seasons of life, and now I'm a senior and I'm writing, and my husband's retired, and it's a different phase. It's a different time of life, and I'm enjoying this as much as I enjoyed the others. It's just different.
Yes. Well, you've multi-series books going on here, and we're talking today about Freedom's Promise, but we were going to talk about all of them actually. But today is the Freedom's Promise came out last month, and so that's what we're kind of focusing on. But we want to talk about all of them. And Selah award-winning author multiple times, Will Rogers award-winning author multiple times. I mean, this is pretty big stuff. Are your books on Kindle Unlimited? I looked at, I
All
didn't.
but one, yes.
So,
The one that I give away with my newsletter, the novella I give away with my newsletter, cannot be on Kindle Unlimited. The rest of them are.
well,
Yes.
I think that's amazing because I'm a Kindle Unlimited fan because I love that I can pick up books. And again, I say this every time I bring Kindle Unlimited up to people, they think, well, you're cheating the author out of money, but they make a lot of money. They make more money sometimes off that Kindle Unlimited than they would if you actually bought the book. Is that true?
Well, depending on the book price, you
Okay.
know, depending on the book price. But yes, if somebody were to buy a 99-cent book or even a $1.99 book, I make more money if you read it on Kindle Unlimited than I will if you pay that little for a book. So it's a better deal for me.
Yeah.
I have
And
no problem with Kindle Unlimited. There are a lot of young moms out there with littles around the house. They don't have money to go out and buy a book.
yeah.
If they can afford Kindle Unlimited and they can read my books there, God bless them. I want them to do that. I want them to be able to read my books. I
And it's
want
a
to make it affordable for people.
and it increases your fan base because they're not going to remember whether it was KU or not. They're going to remember they read it and tell somebody else, wow, this book was really good. And it does, it's word of mouth. You're giving people the opportunity to buy books who might otherwise not do that, to
Yeah,
read the
and
book.
I run ads on Facebook, and on my Facebook ads, I put right on it, free on Kindle Unlimited. I want people to know it's there. I want them to know that's an option. To me, that's a very legitimate option to read a book.
Right, absolutely. So there is something else, though, before we jump too much into your book that I was fascinated by is you raised all those sheep, and you sheared your sheep, but you also did more with those, what you got out of that sheep, the wool. And I want to hear more about your collection of antique spinning wheels. So can you talk
Yeah.
a little bit about that?
Well, I started spinning when I was 16, something I learned in 4-H. At that time, I primarily raised rabbits. And a gal came to a rabbit show with an Angora rabbit. I'd never heard of this thing. And I was instantly in love with it. And she sat with this rabbit on her lap, and she had a little spinning wheel. And she was just pulling fiber off the rabbit because they shed like a collie dog. You just comb it out with your fingers, and she's spinning all during the rabbit show. She's sitting here making yarn off this rabbit, and the rabbit's just calmly sitting on her lap. Doesn't hurt the animal at all. Like I said, it's a shedding process. I was fascinated. I was 15 at the time. So I got a pair of those rabbits, and they were wonderful, gentle creatures. I really enjoyed having them. And then I went and searched for a spinning wheel. Well, there was a short window of time in the 1970s where spinning made a little spike in popularity. And somebody opened a shop in my little hometown of Tecumseh, Michigan, and it was called Spin a Weave. And they had spinning wheels, and they
Mm.
taught me to spin on an antique great wheel, actually, and sold me a spinning wheel. And I was off. That was it. I was hooked for life. I wore that spinning wheel out, bought another one. I wore that one out. And then
Wow.
I bought a more professional wheel, a production wheel, a modern one. And that was the only spinning wheel I had for the longest time. And I had a chance to buy a great wheel. And because I had learned on a great wheel, that's the one people think about most often. That's the great big wheel, antique wheel that you see that's almost, it comes up to here on me. It's a great big thing. And I had a chance to buy one because I learned on it. I really wanted one and talked to my husband into it. He had no idea what was coming. And that was my first antique, and I got it spinning. Matter of fact, I was spinning on it just the other day. And that one is from the Revolutionary War era. That's about
Wow.
1770s. I know that because the nails on it are blacksmith cut nails. Before blacksmith poured nails in a mold, they actually would hammer out a real thin wedge, and then they would cut slices of that wedge, and those were the nails. And
Mm.
that's what holds this together. So that tells me its age. And I just had those two wheels then, my modern production and my great wheel, until COVID hit. And then you know how COVID made everybody bake sourdough bread,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I started buying spinning wheels during COVID. I don't know how that's connected, but anyway,
You have to be stuck in the house. You might as well find something to do, right?
right. So
It's
I found
healthier.
the first one on Marketplace. I bought my big wheel on my great wheel on Craigslist, but then Marketplace came on Facebook, and I saw a spinning wheel for $25, and it was right near a friend of mine. I said, "Hey, could you
Wow.
grab it?" And she did, and I got it, and I was all excited, and got it put together. Had to have a couple parts made. There's a guy down in North Carolina who makes parts. So I sent things down to him, and he made me my replacement parts, and I was off and spinning, and I saw another one on Marketplace.
Oh my gosh.
And the next thing I know, I actually have 7 of them right now.
Wow.
My husband has put his foot down and said, the house is really full of spinning wheels.
I was going to say, where do you put them all? You must have a large home to fit them all.
No, I have a tall house. We moved off the farm about a year ago. Our son purchased the farm from us. He's now raising his horses there. And we moved into town, and which is a big change, right? I married a city boy. I mean, I'm a farm girl, right? But I married a city boy. I made him a farmer for 30 some years, bless his heart. and now it's his turn.
Nice.
So now we're living in town. We're just a mile and a half down the road from the hockey rink and the college where all the sports are that he loves. So we're, again, seasons of life.
Season. Yeah.
But now I have this 3-story house in town with a full basement, and I have lots of room.
Nice. Well, that's to me, that's fascinating. And I'm assuming, I shouldn't assume this, you dye your own yarn as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had
I
a
did.
friend who did that. It was fascinating to me. She spun and dyed and yeah, she really enjoyed it.
And
So
I knit what I call my signature shawls. They're just simple shawls, however I tend to make them. I have one on the back of every chair because you never know when you're going to get cold. I live in the north. So I live very far north. About a quarter mile out this window is Canada. So
oh my gosh.
I'm way
Yeah.
up near.
So so I'm going to put this out there and I'm going to share Peg's all of her links to get to her newsletter so you can subscribe to her newsletter. And I believe if I'm reading this correctly and if it's still true, when you launch a book, you give away one of your shawls that were actually featured in the book to one of your subscribers. Is that true?
Yeah, the shawl's not always featured in the book, but I do make one to go with every book.
Okay.
I did this with my very first release, and I just kind of did it as a lark. I think it was like I had to do something because I was so nervous about the book coming out. So keeping my fingers busy was good. And then I said, well, I'll give it away. And people loved it. And so I did
Sure.
it with the next book and then the
That's
next book.
kind of a big deal.
Well, I never dreamed though that I'd be putting out 3 books a year. So it's keeping me very busy spinning and knitting.
Between writing and spinning. And you said you had hand surgery, right? You had 3 surgeries on your hand. Has that affected your ability to knit?
No, that does not affect, doesn't affect my spinning or knitting at all. It affected my ability to I don't have the strength in my right hand I used to have, like to handle the animals or
Right.
to even handle the shears. Sheep shears are very heavy and
Yeah.
they're dangerous tools. You
Yeah,
better have
I'm
good
sure.
control of them. And I didn't anymore.
So let's talk about your books here. So Freedom's Promise is the one that came out last month, but it started with, was it Freedom's Price was the first in that series?
Yes, Freedom's Price, Freedom's Pride, and then Freedom's Promise. And I think this is the end of the series, but something in the back of my head keeps saying maybe there's going to be a Freedom's Peril.
Okay.
That could,
Wow.
but that'll be down the road because I have another series to write first.
Very, very prolific writing. So tell us about the setting of these books and maybe some of the inspiration that came from them.
Well, all my series are inspired by real historical events. And I take a lot of it from my family tree. I can trace 3 of my grandparents' trees back to the early to mid 1600s in this country. I'm a direct descendant of 4 Mayflower passengers, which is pretty cool.
I'm a direct descendant of the Mayflower passengers as well, as one.
Which ones?
Well, we have John Adams actually is in my family tree. My grandmother wanted to be a daughter of the American Revolution, so she did the whole genealogy all the way back to the Mayflower. So I have the written genealogy. I just have never dug into it to really look.
Oh, nice.
My mom gave it to me. Anyway, I digress.
But it's fun. It's fun. So then I can pull on my family history. And when my family came over, they were about 2/3 Puritans and 1/3 Quakers. And Puritans and Quakers hated each other. Well, the Puritans hated the Quakers anyway. So even from the beginning, my family couldn't get along.
Because usually the Quakers are pretty easygoing, right?
They were. And this series, Path to Freedom, really deals with the Quakers. The Quakers who settled in the southern slaveholding states when the laws really changed around slavery and it became illegal to purchase and give a slave his freedom. There was this big migration of entire communities of Quakers just packed up and moved to the new Northwest Territory, which at that time was Ohio, Indiana, and Illinois. And there's still a lot of Friends churches in those areas because that's where the Quakers migrated to, because the Northwest Territory came in as free territory, no slaves. And so these communities of Quakers just packed up in mass and moved north. And that's the Path to Freedom series. It starts with the girl on the cover there, Gwen, is actually a Welsh immigrant. She's not a Quaker at the beginning of the story. and most of my family did immigrate from Wales. So again, I was pulling on my family history. And she winds up with the Quakers making this journey up into the into the free states. And in that initial one, she first meets Zachary. He's the one in Freedom's Promise. So you do have to read these in order. And he is a Black Quaker.
Oh,
And
wow.
that again was true because the Quakers saw no distinction between people at
Which is
all.
why they were leaving the slave states.
Yes. Yeah. So, and then the middle book was supposed to be about Gwen's sister Faye, but it really turned into more Mark Allen's story. So he's the one on the cover. But anyway, as you go through the series, you're going through with the Quakers and what they encountered. And actually in Freedom's Price, where I talk about the journey to Ohio, I had a journal from somebody who had made that journey. And I sort of followed so I actually had a historical journal to follow that, where they stopped and what they did.
Oh,
And I used
nice.
that as a template.
Wow, that it's always the trick when you're doing historical fiction is finding some accurate
Yes.
historical facts that you can build upon, and having that journal, that's pretty
Oh,
interesting.
my initial series, Forts of Refuge, is written during Pontiac's Rebellion, which is a war I was surprised that so few people knew of. But I grew up in Southeast Michigan, and that's where Pontiac was from. So it was a part of my growing up. I always knew the story. And since writing the books, I realized most people never got that part of history. They
Right.
didn't realize that there even was a rebellion, Pontiac's Rebellion. So I set the story there at 1763, and I have 3 books in the series because there were 3 forts that were attacked that did not fall to the rebellion. And they were Fort Pitt, Fort Detroit, and Fort Niagara. So I set one story in each. Those books you do not have to read in order. They're just connected by a theme. They actually all take place at exactly the same time in 3 different areas.
Okay.
They don't interconnect. Well, there's one little tiny interconnection, but
Well,
we'll let the reader
I
find
have
that.
4 books written in your Forts of Refuge: Sarah's Choice, Maggie's Strength, Abigail's Peace, and is that Henri or Henry's
Yes.
Regret?
Henri's Regret. I actually wrote Henri's Regret quite a while after as a prequel because
Okay.
my daughter-in-law said, I want to know his story. He shows up in Maggie's Strength. He's the brother of the
Okay.
hero. And she wanted to know. I had so many people too that said to me, we didn't know if he was a good guy or a bad guy when he came into the story. Why is he like that? So that little novella tells the why he's like that.
Okay.
And he will actually be in another book. There will be a spinoff of that series called Beyond the Forts.
Wow, I would love to know, what does your writing day look like? You are cranking out books. I mean, I was doing 3 books a year, but 2 of them were novellas, so it wasn't that big a deal, but you're cranking out 3 books a year. And I'm guessing there's somewhere in the around 80, 90,000 words per book. Is that
Yeah,
true?
around 85,000 words. That's what
Okay.
it seems to be. Like, I don't shoot for that so much, but that just sort of seems to be my storytelling voice.
Yeah.
It's kind
I
of my
always land
cadence.
around there. I always land around 88 to 90. So
Yeah.
for some reason,
I think every author kind of has their cadence
yeah.
for telling a story, and that
So what
seems
does
to be
your writing day look like? Do you spend all day writing, and you've got marketing, and you're doing self-publishing, so you've got all that goes with that as well?
well, I generally write most of the time. I will start writing around 9 o'clock in the morning, and I'll write till 11:30. That's my writing time for the day. But I'm very disciplined in that time. I'm not on social media. I'm not doing other things. I've started using writing sprints where I actually set a timer and I just write. Timer goes off. I take a 5-minute break. I come back. I set the timer for 25 minutes. I write 25 minutes straight. You know, but one of the reasons I can do that is I am a planner. So I have my story plotted out before I start writing.
That's
I
huge.
I don't always follow it exactly. Matter of fact, I never follow it
Well, do you
exactly.
find the Holy Spirit comes in and changes things, or brings in a character you weren't
Absolutely.
expecting, or somebody says something, you're like, I didn't know that about that person. Like you're learning your
Oh
character,
yeah.
you're writing the story.
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, Freedom's Promise did not turn out in the end anything like I originally envisioned, but
Huh.
I love the ending. And I do feel like that was totally spirit driven because that's not where I was going with it. But and the early readers are coming back saying how much the ending impacted them as well. So it was the right ending, and you have to be flexible with that. But
Right.
that actually happened during the plotting process. It was during the plotting that I realized
That's,
my initial thoughts on the ending was not going to happen the way I thought. And then as I was writing, there were even more changes that came in. But having that plan, when I sit down, I know where the story's going. That's what allows me to write a book in 3 months or less.
that makes a big difference because I've always been a planner, and I found the last book I wrote, I did not have it planned out like I usually do. And I just struggled. I got stumped, I got stuck, and so but there are some people that only write by the seat of their pants. And that's the
Well,
only
I
way
think
they
they're
have
more
fun.
disciplined in their thoughts, right? Because I will chase squirrels all day. I'm a squirrel chaser. Got a
Uh,
thought, I'm off here, I'm off there. My
that's,
mind's going a million miles an hour. So I need that roadmap to stay between the lines.
yeah. I'm a little in between. I'll do both, the somewhere in between. I think having some structure is important because I do believe that if you're structured and to some extent, you have less rewrites. I mean,
Oh
I,
yeah.
people will say, well, I had one gal that said she got 100,000 word book done in 3 months. And I'm like, wow, that's, impressive. And she goes, well, that was my first draft. I had 13 more drafts. And I'm like, okay, I don't have 13 drafts. I do one draft.
I do one
I
draft
go
as
through
well.
and I go back, and that's part of the problem, which slows me down, is I have to go back and read what I wrote the day before to get back
Yes.
into that. Do you do that as well?
I do, but I think especially because I write historical and
Mhm.
I write early history, um, I need to get my mind back into that time period. So I read what I wrote the day before. That puts me back in the time period, that puts me back in the rhythm of the story, and then I go forward. And I do that every day.
But I
Yes.
think even if you're not writing, for me, I do contemporary, but it's Southern fiction, and I'm not from the South originally, so I have to get back into that, and then I have to get back into I think the emotions of that character in order to move forward to see where they were. It's almost like you have to immerse yourself in that character in order to write from that point of view
You
again.
kind of become that character. You have to
You
become that character.
you do. The
You
funny
know,
thing is my critique group says I do my male character much better than my female. They never have anything to change on that. I'm like, okay, that's just weird. Like, why is that? So
I tend to get the same comments from my critique partners. So I think it, but I live with a guy,
I live with a guy too, but they all live with guys. You'd think that, I don't know. It's a funny thing,
I
but
also grew up in a family where there were very few girls, even among us cousins. I don't know,
um,
like there's 12 cousins and there's 3 girls.
I
The
have
three.
three sisters.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I don't have a sister.
Uh,
Even the neighborhood I grew up in, there was one other girl. That was it. So I grew up in a very male.
well, and a farm. You grew up on a farm, and that's kind of more of a man. Most men are more comfortable in that setting than women. So you kind of get acclimated to it, I think, which makes sense. I don't have that excuse. I did not grow up on a farm. I grew up in the city, even though I was in 4-H. I grew up in the city. I grew up in the Bay Area, right across from San Francisco.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well,
Very different from me.
very different. So all of these of you, you have to show, okay, those of you that are just listening, you're not going to be able to see this. So this is why you should go on the YouTube channel and show us your awards that you just got, Peg.
Oh, yes, thank
I
you.
want to see
I
those.
did just get these in the mail. These are the two, gotta get my light in
Oh,
here.
yeah. Will
Will
Rogers
Rogers
Medallion.
Medallions Award. Silver Prairies won the silver. That was kind of appropriate. Silver Prairies won the silver. And then Cobalt Skies won the bronze. Silver Prairies, I had entered in traditional Western. I can make a case for it being a romance, but it's not as romancy as the other books. So I put it traditional Western, and Cobalt Skies went in the Western romance category. So they did
Well,
not compete against each other.
well, congratulations. How exciting for you.
It
I mean,
was.
I'm so happy for you. And
I don't know that I'll ever write another Western. Um, like I said, my ideas come from historical events.
right.
I wrote this series about ex-cavalrymen coming out of the Civil War and how did they rebuild their lives, because my great-great-grandfather had to do that. And he actually makes a cameo in the first book in the series, Emerald Fields. My great-great-grandfather makes a cameo, and I did put a picture of him in the beginning of the book.
Now,
just for
what
fun.
is that, the More Perfect Union series?
Yes, More Perfect Union. And when I put that series together, I like to look at things from a rounded aspect. So the first book is they're both from the north. The hero and heroine are both from the north. The second book, he's from the north, she's from the south. And then the third book, they're both from the south. So I was looking at their situations from every direction. And I did that with the Forts of Refuge too. In Forts of Refuge, the two main characters in the first book, Sarah's Choice, are both they're both American colonists. And in the second book, he's French. She was a colonist who was taken captive and raised by Indians.
Oh,
And
wow.
then in the third book, she is a colonist and he is a Seneca Indian. So I was trying to bring in the different aspects of the war, the French, the English, the Indian aspect, and show it from all those perspectives.
I can see why you're a multi-award winning author. I mean, you're digging into some stuff. A lot of people will write a series, maybe a historical series, and keep it in the same place with the same types of characters because there's so much research involved to getting those stories to be accurate. But you are all over the place, so I can see that
I
you
read
have
a lot of research. Yes,
I imagine.
I do.
Well, I'm super excited. I can't wait to jump into your series. I need to finish my book I'm reading now. It's Lilac Girls, and it's very long and it's very kind of depressing because it's on the World War II, Nazi, all that kind of stuff, which I have a hard time with. But someone said you have to read it, so I'm trying to sludge my way through it. But I can't wait. I'm gonna download your books and start reading those. I'm excited to read those books.
Well, thank you.
Wow.
The series I'm working on now, I'm just starting to write this week, um, is the series Salem Village. And this again, I'm pulling from my family. It's set during Salem Village during the witch hunts. I found out that two of my ninth great grandfathers were in Salem at that time.
Wow.
Neither one was involved in the witch hunts, and the story is not going to be about the witch trials. The story is going to be about how the people of Salem were affected by what was going on.
Wow, that's going to be fascinating. That's amazing. Well, it has been such a pleasure to talk to you, Peg, and I hope when you come out with your next book, you'll jump back on here and share it with us. It's been fascinating. I am just so appreciative of you taking the time to talk with me today.
Thanks for having me. It's been fun.
It's been a lot of fun. So I will make sure that all of Peg's links are in the show notes so you guys can get on there and get on her website, subscribe to her newsletter. Just check it out. This is pretty fascinating stuff. And she's got beautiful pictures on there of all these shawls that she has made and her spinning wheels. So you want to, even if you're just going over to gander to something really, really pretty to look at, you'll enjoy doing that as well. So thank you so much. I hope you have I will pray for your books and your success, and look forward to hearing about the next book you have coming out.
Thank you very much.